Hi everybody, Nam here. This is the first episode of NamNotes in the new year. I don't really have a schedule for this, so whenever it goes up is when it goes up. But this episode today is going to be about a topic that is somewhat close to me. I have a lot of personal experiences about it. The trigger for me sharing this today is that I got a call from my neighbor and he was experiencing some symptoms and he thought, hey, this might be gout. He wanted to talk to somebody who had experienced it before because I'd mentioned it. So he and I had a phone conversation. We basically determined what I thought was gout. It sounded like gout to me. Disclaimer, I'm not a medical doctor. I don't know anything about medicine, biology, really anything like that. Take that with whatever grain of salt you would like. Unless you have gout, don't take more salt. So, first of all, what is gout? Gout is a disease of extreme pain that a lot of people experience in joints, and oftentimes it manifests in a person's foot. There might be like huge swelling in like the big knuckle of your foot, and it could be either foot, but it could really be any joint. And so this form of arthritis, I'm reading like a summary thing and it says inflammatory arthritis. The thing that causes the inflammation though is having lots of uric acid in your blood. That uric acid creates these uric acid crystals, which are needle-like in and around your joints, and they form in and around them. And so as you move around with these crystals on the joints, it basically inflames them and it makes them really painful to move with and put weight on and things like that. That is basically what gout is in a nutshell. Now, what causes gout? Now, from my understanding, there's a lot of different causes, but effectively what I just explained to you is uric acid buildup in the blood, and then the uric acid crystals form. So that's effectively the cause. Now, the next question is, what causes uric acid to build up in the blood? And I think if people have like a normal diet, it will basically build up in the blood just based on the things that you eat. But apparently there's other factors. And so some of the other factors are just like if you don't drink enough water, if you don't exercise enough, if you are overweight or obese. And all of these things are things that everybody should be able to control. However, I did some more research because I've had to delve deep down this rabbit hole. Everybody is susceptible to a form of gout if enough uric acid builds up in your blood. The thing is, some people either might not have as many uric acid crystals build up on their joints. Some people might not be irritated by the uric acid crystals. Some people can just dissipate the uric acid well before it even creates the crystals. It really depends on like the individual person to decide and figure out what the heck. Some people might go through their entire life and they won't experience anything even if they have high uric acid in their blood. Other people might just have like physiological or dietary changes throughout their life, and so a lot of people believe that gout is like an old person's disease, and that's not true because I experienced it in my 30s, and so and I'd like to think that 30 is not that old yet. Let's go ahead and talk about why it affects some people more than others. The arthritis pain, if anybody hasn't experienced arthritis, it's super painful within the joint. Like, it almost feels like when you try and move that joint, it feels like there's stuff like hurting on the inside of that joint. It's so weird to describe, but like that's basically what it feels like. And then once you start to swell, it basically just hurts to even move it because you're inflamed. And the thing is, the gout itself doesn't do any damage, but the inflammation that it causes can do real damage because once you're super swollen, you're basically stretching tissue, you're basically experiencing like stretched skin, and there could be damage to like parts in and around wherever the gout crystals are actually formed because of that irritation. That's why it could be really bad. And another thing that can also add to the exacerbation of gout is that, and this is the thing that affects me because I'm not really overweight, I'm not really someone who has a horrible diet. I have a genetic disposition to gout. And I found this out because I was like, hey, I remember this memory from a long time ago when my dad had crutches for like a while. And he didn't like get into an injury or anything, like nothing injured his foot. And I asked my mom, hey, does dad have gout? And she was like, oh yeah, that's what he had when, when you were a kid and he was on crutches. And I'm like, oh, okay. As it turns out, my mom then goes ahead and tells me, oh yeah, my brother has gout too. So now I find out that my uncle also has gout. So apparently there is a slightly higher disposition for men to be affected by gout than women. And so both sides of my family tree have this gout disposition. And I'm like, crap. I spun the wheel of genetics and it is pretty horrible. All right. So, long time ago, there was this misconception that gout was either a rich person's disease or an old person's disease. I personally know that it's not an old person disease because I experienced it when I was younger, assuming that in my 30s is younger. And before civilization evolved to what we have today, it might have been known as a rich person's disease because the rich person might have been someone who had the luxury of being overweight, obese, and indulging in all of the foods that increase uric acid. And so we're going to talk about some of those in a minute. After I discovered that this gout was a thing and I probably had it, I was like, okay, what can I do to mitigate it? And I did end up getting on a video call at the time. This was back in 2020, so there was a global pandemic. And so I got on a video call with a doctor, and the doctor confirmed effectively what I already suspected. And they were like, "Yeah, you probably have gout." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's what I was afraid of." Short of prescribing any medicine. All right, so let's talk about what I know about medicine. There's a couple of medicines that I know that exist. I don't know what they're called, and I wouldn't want to name drop medicines anyway. But the first one is something that you take daily, and this is something that would help reduce the uric acid in your body. Anecdotally, what I've heard about it from like a couple of friends who had like coworkers that took this medication is that they basically end up smelling like pee all the time because the medicine basically helps you sweat out all of the uric acid. And so I was like, okay, that's not something I'm interested in. So I decided, all right, well, what else is there? And there is something else that somebody got as a prescription medication. I think it was a steroid, so I'm not exactly sure what it was called. But as I said, I don't want to name drop medications anyway. There was this one that one of my friends took because he basically took the steroid and it would help mitigate the pain and the swelling of the flare ups. And so it would basically be something that he took as soon as he feels like something was coming on. And then the dosage actually drops off. So he would take it for like a few days or a week or something. And then the dosage like drastically drops off like by half until he's basically not on the medication anymore. I'm like, that sounds more like something that I would be interested in, but it's a steroid and it's controlled. And I'm like, all right, I don't know if that would be worth it. The other thing is that since the only major risk factors I have is probably diet and the genetic thing, I could probably control it with diet. And I was like, all right, I'm not big on taking medicine for no reason anyway, so I'm going to try and just change my diet. And so, you do your basic research, like you look up on Google, all right, what are the foods that cause gout? And this is like a misnomer, right? So I've become a little bit more specific about my searches, and I'm like, okay, what foods cause uric acid in the blood? And because that's mostly what people are concerned about, because foods directly don't cause gout. Foods cause chemistry changes in your body, and then your body takes whatever's in there and does the thing. And if there happens to be more of this one thing, uric acid, in your blood, you might have gout attacks. Basically, everything that makes life delicious. So, things like red meat, things like alcohol, really exacerbate the gout. These are foods that I love, but I haven't completely eliminated from my diet. The most important thing to note is that if you have a lot more of these things in a certain amount of frequency, and your body can't clear or eliminate the uric acid fast enough, it is more likely to cause a gout flare up. And so that's kind of like the statistical, long winded answer of, yo, don't eat too much of this without taking a break in between. So I'm a fan of experimenting with food, and I even did a live stream once where I compared like a bunch of different burgers, and they weren't just all beef burgers. There was like There's like a turkey burger. There were a couple of plant-based burgers, and so I'm perfectly fine with replacing a burger that I cook at home with fake meat. The technology has gotten good enough, and honestly, most of the burger that you taste is like the dressings and other things that you put on it. It's fine, and so I've been eating healthy for like a year, and then all of a sudden I start to have another gout attack, and I'm like, what happened? And I was like, I didn't have any alcohol, I didn't have any red meat. What the heck caused it? And so here I was doing a lot of cooking at home. One of the things that I'm always a huge advocate is that the typical diet does not include enough legumes and beans, and they are very easy to add to your diet, and they are very healthy, and they're filling. If you have beans and rice, that is complete protein, and that could replace a meat source, in this case, beef for me. And I was like, okay. So one of the things that I ate once was dal. So I made dal from red masoor dal, and I made like a huge batch of it. So for several days, I was eating dal two, maybe three times a day, depending on how much dal was left and what I was coming up with to eat with it. And that was the only thing that I had eaten more of. And I was like, oh crap, because things like beans, legumes, and dal are not going to come up on regular searches where people are like, hey, what foods cause gout? Because those foods are healthy, and even things that say they are a slight gout risk will not give you the full details as to, they might even not list these on the list. But so I was eating lots of masoor dal. As it turns out, they have a moderate amount of purines, which then convert to uric acid in the blood. And I'm like, damn it! I thought I was being so good. And I was trying to be healthy, and I cooked that at home. I felt defeated because I'm like, I'm trying to be healthy, and the universe is just screwing me. And so one of the easiest ways to figure out if something has high purines or converts to uric acid is literally just search for that specific food. The problem is there's a bunch of healthy foods that will not show up in these lists. So let me just tell you some of the things that I've learned. There's some nuts, there's beans and legumes, there's spinach. So the good news about spinach is that it's by weight, and so the amount of volume matters. You're not typically eating huge volumes of spinach, and so it's probably less likely where if you're having a bunch of spinach that you'll build up enough uric acid. However, if you're eating things like dal or beans, as I said, they're more filling. You could eat a bunch of them. They are actually dense. And so those things can convert to uric acid in your blood. And if you have a lot of them, depending on your risk factors, depending on how much your body can eliminate, it might tip you over the top. And so here I was eating basically a couple meals of dal a day, and it was too much, and I got a gout attack after I thought I was being really good. Ugh, that sucks, man, I look back at myself and I say, yeah, that sucks. You're trying your hardest to be healthy and avoid like bad foods. And you're like, I can't even have dal. So you know what I ate after that? I was just like, screw it, I don't know what to eat. And so I just had chicken nuggets. And I'm like, I've had chicken nuggets for days on end before, and I never got a gout attack. And I'm like, all right, these are probably fine for gout. They're not the best for my health, but whatever. And so I was just really, really depressed at why eating healthy would also cause gout. And I'm just like, the universe is not making this easy for me. Oftentimes, people give up red meat and they'll replace it with fish. And you know what one of the other high purine uric acid foods is? It's fatty fish. And so if you have a bunch of fish, that could also cause uric acid. And so I was like, God damn it. Because you know what else I like? I like fish. And so between the chicken nuggets and the fish like sticks, I have to choose the chicken nuggets. Not because I necessarily like them better, but because of this gout implication. And I do like fish, so that kind of hurts too. So we just talked about a lot of foods that might surprisingly give you gout. So let's talk about the other side of that. And this is going to be the foods that I eat or consume to help mitigate the uric acid in my blood. One of the foods that I started out having was because I thought it would be super easy to kind of add to my diet and it wouldn't really change anything. It was having a lemon water. Now, it's not lemon juice. It's not lemonade because lemonade certainly has way too much sugar and might cancel out whatever benefits, anti-gout benefits there are. But it's basically squeezing a lemon and just putting water into it and maybe just icing it up. So it's basically just lemon juice and water. Now, you might be asking, wait, lemon juice is acidic, and that is correct. So lemon juice is acidic, but once it metabolizes in your blood, it doesn't add to the uric acid. It helps, like, balance out the uric acid. I don't know why. I don't know the chemistry about this. That was really hard because buying fresh lemons all the time, having to squeeze them. I don't know if anybody had like that fake lemon juice, but that fake lemon juice doesn't have like real lemons squeezed out into it in the way that it would when you squeeze lemons. That doesn't work. So lemon water, freshly squeezed in water with ice. And that was actually very hard. And then I ended up letting like some lemons go bad, and I was just like, this isn't working. So obviously I kind of abandoned that. Up until this point in my life, I didn't really drink coffee because I thought that I didn't really like the taste of coffee. But at this point, I had already started liking dark beers, and I'm like, oh, dark beers. Some of them have a coffee flavor. This is actually pretty good. I started drinking coffee because apparently coffee is also something that one can drink to help mitigate the uric acid in your blood. And I was like, okay. So I started drinking coffee. How do I drink my coffee? Literally black. That's it. Just coffee. No sugar, no cream, nothing else. Just everything is just for fighting gout. This was not a huge leap for me because I was already having tea, and I don't sweeten my tea or anything because I don't feel like I need it because I'm drinking these for health benefits. And if I was drinking the coffee for health benefits, it's literally just the coffee. And even if the coffee isn't the strongest, so like I'll have my wife's second brewed coffee from the same grinds, that's okay because it's basically like coffee tea. And so I'll hopefully get some of the benefits of the coffee, maybe even less caffeine, and hopefully still some of the gout fighting benefits. That's something that I've changed. I can't say that the coffee by itself did anything, but I drink it a lot more regularly now, so maybe like 4 to 5 times a week. The next thing is probably the biggest thing that I found that has made a huge difference. It is eating cherries or drinking tart cherry juice. Let's first talk about the tart cherry juice. So I started buying these canisters of tart cherry juice, and they are expensive. Like for the amount of juice you get. So I would oftentimes like get it and then I would dilute it with some water because I would want to make it slightly less tart. But I don't know if I was drinking enough to make a difference, and I was just like, oh, okay. So occasionally I have one or two stockpiled at any given time, and then when I feel like there might be an attack, I might go and just like down a glass of this tart cherry juice. But one thing that I did find that worked a lot better was just literally eating cherries. Now, I know that cherries aren't in season all the time and the price ebbs and flows with fresh cherries. And I know that eating fresh cherries is super annoying to get the pit or the seed out. And so I do like the fresh cherries the best, but they are a lot of work and they are more expensive than what I use as a solution now, which is frozen cherries. I now purchase bulk bags of frozen cherries and I just leave them in my freezer. Maybe several times a week, I will pull out a bowl and just put a bunch in a bowl, let them thaw, and then I eat them. Like, I might just eat them throughout the day, but that forces me to eat them because I'm like, well, I thawed these cherries, so now I have to eat them. But I found that helps the most because if I feel a gout attack like potentially starting, if I eat cherries that day, it actually helps prevent the attack flare up from happening. And I was like, wow, this is so amazing. Like, how come eating the cherries helps and drinking the cherry juice did not? And how come, like, both the fresh and the frozen work? So, obviously, when the frozen ones are being eaten, they still help as much as the fresh ones. So, I did some additional research. I had to learn about a chemical that was inside of the cherries. Right now, if you search it up, hopefully it tells the same thing and that the science hasn't changed that much. But it's working for me. So I know I have personal experiments. I know it's correct, but your mileage may vary. So cherries have this chemical that help fight the inflammation of the uric acid crystals, and it probably helps clear out the uric acid because I found that I've been able to rebound a lot quicker after eating them. There's this chemical in the red. Oh, yeah. So I was once telling some people a story about this and how the cherries help. And they're like, oh, is it the tannins? And I'm like, no, no. And it was at the time where I had just done the research and I didn't know what the word was yet. But I'm like, no, 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 it's not that. So the thing that's inside of cherries that help mitigate the gout attacks is also present in red wine. So it's, I guess, apparently in things that are red and fruit and will help fight this thing. But the chemical or chemicals, they're known as anthocyanins. So these anthocyanins are the things that make cherries. I don't know if they make the cherries red. I don't know if they are just associated with things that are red, but these anthocyanins are oftentimes also in wine. Not any wine, but red wine specifically. And so in my mind, I somehow matched up the redness of the cherries with the red wine and was like, somehow something in the red fruit or red fruit skins definitely also adds to fighting gout. And so to this very day, when I drink beer somehow has something that makes gout worse. And so I can't even have really more than like a glass of beer if I wanted any. I try and limit my beer a lot. And I used to love beer. I mean, I still arguably love beer, but I don't have that much anymore. And here's the other thing. I will also be able to have liquor more frequently than I have beer because it's by volume. And so liquor just punches me in the face way more with alcohol, so I can have volumetrically less of it, and then it doesn't affect me gout-wise as much. My normal default, if I want to have an alcoholic beverage now, is wine, and there are like health benefits to wine that wine lovers will say alcohol is still relatively bad for you, but if I'm going to have some, especially from the gout perspective, red wine is the best to have because there's a chance that they also contain these anthocyanins. And so I was like, oh, so that's why when I have wine now, I usually default to red wine, and that's why I try and have red wine as opposed to white wine. I also prefer red wine over white wine. If you think that you have gout and you want to try and fight it from a balanced diet perspective, do attack the things with this in mind. Avoid eating the things that cause more uric acid. Look up every specific food, especially foods that you might make like on a big batch on the weekends, and then you might have a bunch of meals throughout that week, because that's a pattern that I follow very frequently, and that's why I fell into that trap of, oh hey, dal is healthy. Oh, but not for gout. Oh, yeah, irony. The other backup thing I have is now I just have a bag of frozen cherries all the time in my freezer. I will just eat it all the time. I just found that it's easier for me to eat it all the time than trying to like measure or fight against the diet, or like, because once you start to feel a twinge of a potential gout flare up, it might be too late. So you kind of have to eat the cherries on the regular, and that'll help kind of keep everything, well, regular. Not from like the gastrointestinal standpoint, but so that you don't get gout basically at any time. All right, that was a long talk about a lot of things related to gout, so I'm going to edit this down. I wanted to get all these thoughts down because this is like a single person data point, but that's very detailed, and for anybody who's going through it themselves, you know, it might be more helpful to hear from someone who experiences it as opposed to, you know, oh hey, these are the things that a lot of other people have tried or that help most people, but maybe your situation's different. Nobody knows. So the one thing that my dad was told to do when he had gout when I was a young kid was that he should eat more citrus fruits. And so he was given clementines, like, hey, go ahead and eat clementines all the time. And so we started having clementines all around the house. I don't know how well he stuck to it. I did see him eat it. I don't know if it helps. To this day, I know that he stopped drinking lots of beer. He started drinking, I think, hard liquor. So if that's any sort of indication about where my family has gone. That is everything that I know about gout. Hopefully, if you listen through this whole thing, that you found this interesting, you found it useful. And as I said, I'm not a doctor, but I experiment. And so I know what my body does with gout. So maybe it'll encourage you to experiment too. All right. Well, anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Thanks for listening. You have a glorious day.